Hi, I'm Bob. I came to my place at Wharton after 5 years in the private sector. I worked first in investment banking after I graduated from Harvard College with a degree in social studies, and then I worked at the IFC in their investment analyst program for 2 years immediately prior to Wharton. My business school strategy was pretty simple: just go to the best school that you can get into. And in my case, I also I spent more time growing up in the Northeast, and sort of also knew that geographically that's where I wanted to stay. So I applied essentially to Harvard, Wharton, and Columbia, and Wharton was the one that took me, and so it made my decision very easy. So I think I look at the GMAT as the type of proposition where a great score won't get you in, but a bad score will definitely keep you out. And as long as you are able to clear a certain threshold, which I say is typically at or above the median for last year's incoming class, you should be doing well enough that it's just not a factor either way. It may be a factor in whether a school might give you a scholarship to attend, so that there still is a reason to obviously do as high a score as you can. But when I think in the application process, what you really need to show are two things. First, I think you have to show that whatever path you've taken to date, or whatever environment you've been in to date, you've basically been as successful and as impactful as you can possibly be. I was fortunate in that, coming from IFC, Wharton knew the program I was in very well, and so I didn't have to do as much work showing my success at the IFC. But the second thing, I think the thing I really did focus on a lot was, these schools assume that because you have a good GMAT, because you've had maybe a job or a few jobs where you've done well, the technical aspects of business, or you can learn them very quickly. What they really want to see is your leadership potential and what type of colleague or what type of manager you would be on a team. And so in my case, I used my essay to highlight that. I talked about volunteering for a nonprofit as a competition judge, and talking about how I was often deliberating with people who were much more far in their careers, who had maybe seen more competitions, but at the same time showing them how I could contribute to the discussion and help bring a consensus out of different views and different opinions. So that kind of thing, I think, gives the school a lot more of a feel for what type of leader and what type of person you would be when you might find yourself leading teams 5, 10, 20 years down the road. Well, so in my case, I had I'd done campus visits to a few schools, probably 2 or so years before I applied, and then from there I really just talked to either current students who maybe had been my classmates in undergraduate, or people from the IFC who were currently out working. Actually, I talked to 5 or 6 of them just to get a representative sense for what their application process was like, how they communicated their story, and really who they were as emerging leaders. I think I would say I used the information that the school put together, any kind of admissions presentation, any kind of review of the website. I think that can be helpful just so you know sort of what the school's branding goals are, because those do come into play when you're thinking about how you sort of tell your own story, but also really show the school that you're going to be well positioned to take advantage of the resources that they've invested in developing for their students. Sure, so I think Wharton is trying to do a couple things in this realm. I think number one, they are trying to focus their curriculum on giving all of their students a strong data-driven mindset that they can apply to whatever field they end up working in. And that, I would say, of teaching methods, they will use sort of the most appropriate method for the function or the industry. So that could be cases, that could be lectures and problem sets or group projects. But what they really are conscious of is that their leaders are comfortable working with data and making decisions and communicating those decisions based on data. The other big thing that Wharton has really pushed into is their contributions to students who want entrepreneurial or tech careers. They've done that in several ways. There are now more Wharton-founded companies that are successful. Warby Parker is one that we like to talk a lot about Wharton as an example. But then they now offer a program for select students to spend the second year, first semester in San Francisco at a satellite campus. And this again appeals to somebody who wants to work on maybe their own startup, values the opportunity to intern at a startup or a venture capital firm, and just really be plugged in to the Silicon Valley community. And I've seen a number of my friends take part in that program and get a lot out. Yeah, so they launched this program about a year ago. And essentially, this is, it's a track within Wharton. So if you have 19 credits, for instance, you might be dedicating 5 or 6 to this business analytics track. It has a good grounding in everything from how to do programming in a language like R, or how to use things like MATLAB or Stega. But then a lot of the departments have collaborated to design courses where there are opportunities to actually get comfort working with large unstructured data sets, structuring experiments to collect data for things like for marketing or for finance. And the program is really gets back to the idea of Wharton being a place where the data-driven mindset is a big differentiator. So a class is either 1 credit or for a full semester, or half a credit for half a semester. Sure, so my understanding is that this qualifies as a STEM major in the eyes of the US government. And so essentially, if you are an international student who's pursuing a STEM major and successfully gets your degree with a completed major in business analytics, there is a longer period that you can stay in the US for. I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but I know it gives people more flexibility to either maybe try again to apply to the H-1B lottery, or to just get some type of US experience so that maybe a company would take a chance on them a bit down the line and sponsor them. So I think the essay is really your only chance to bring your authentic voice to life for the admissions committee. Your numbers sort of are your numbers at this point, and so it's really important that the essay can show anything ranging from maybe how your experiences either growing up or working have shaped your values, or how you've used your values in a particular work situation. Other times, people have found it very effective to write about, again, less about like their immediate career aspirations, although that might be an angle you want to focus on, but really, how you have displayed great leadership qualities and great potential and sort of strong values, in addition to being a high achieving person, because anybody can be high achieving and be a dud as a leader, even if your first job out of school might not entail you leading people. The school wants to see that confidence that when you do find yourself with leadership opportunities, you will be effective and impactful. So my process, I'm someone who I like to start with an idea and then think about how does that idea help shape the application. So what I mean by that is if your recommender is going to be writing about some facet of your leadership or your teamwork or your performance, maybe you want to use the essay to either complement that or to go in a different direction and show a whole other side of you that another piece of the application isn't revealing. So for me, I thought a lot about how does each potential idea fit into the story I'm trying to tell as a holistic package that I'm putting together. In terms of writing, I'm always someone who just likes to sort of open the computer and just start writing, kind of see what comes out, and then really the good to great transition in essay writing for me happens with just revisions after revisions after revisions. That's particularly important because you might find, depending on your style, that's easy to write a really long essay, and then you would find yourself in a position where you have to cut to fit the word length, and suddenly your structure could fall apart, or the force of it could fall apart. So I'd really say, for me, that process helped me make sure I was both going in the right direction thematically, but then also just giving myself time to keep making revisions. I did hire a consultant. Truth be told, I probably wouldn't hire a consultant again. I don't think, or at least the one I had wasn't worth the money, and really, might have had a decent structure for brainstorming potential essay topics, but I really wasn't impressed with their editing. It was sometimes just minor grammatical stuff or like a very vague question. It just didn't fit for my style of writing. So I would say that at the minimum, you should just show it to someone who is not part of the process, like maybe a coworker who's not applying, or a friend, sibling, relative, and just really try to get their feedback on, like, is this you? Like, did what you write resonate with how, like, maybe they see you as a person? Because that's the best way to figure out if what you're saying is not coming across as like your sort of best authentic self possible. My consultant, I did not. I went to Harvard, I believe. I don't think I made much of an impact. I think it was more about the model that they were using, which was very sort of regimented and procedural. Versus, there probably could have been better consultants out there who had just taken the time to get to know me as a person and then kind of tailored their advice to that. And I mean, those I think are hard to find, but worth exploring for sure. So initially, I didn't receive any scholarship. I say that is one of the drawbacks of Wharton is that they don't have as big a scholarship pool as some schools might have. I did receive one in my second year that they introduced that was a bit more need-based in nature. So they looked at like what your outstanding loans were and sort of used that as a little bit of a barometer to gauge how much they would give you. And then the thing I am exploring now is, because the ISC qualifies as a public service organization, Wharton does have a fund that makes grants to help with loan repayment for people who really go through the application process for that and are successful. In terms of budget, I would say that you have to be pretty careful in how you think about the line items that aren't as fixed and clear to understand from day one. So I think, obviously everyone understands what rent is, and Philadelphia, it's not as expensive as like a New York or a San Francisco, not as cheap as maybe some other cities, but because Wharton people all live in Center City, Philadelphia, as opposed to West Philadelphia where campus is, you're generally looking anywhere from kind of nice high-rise buildings to brownstone townhouses as well. And I think, but really when you think about budgeting, those are fairly easy to figure out like what those costs are, and you can work hard to find some deals are better than others. But really, the things that you need to think about carefully are things like club dues or costs of tickets to conferences, and then especially the travel. I think someone told me that the difference between a good MBA experience and a great MBA experience is spending about an extra $20,000 over 2 years on travel. It's something that people do say can get too extravagant, and I would agree with that. But I think that this is just an invaluable opportunity to get to know people in a setting away from campus, where you're not talking about recruiting, you're not talking about grades or schoolwork, but really just exploring the world together. And I found that even now, those people that I sort of became close to in that forum are much closer friends today than someone I met taking a class. So in my case, obviously as an American, student loans are essentially a right, assuming you don't have any sort of major legal troubles. And so I use that program up front. I think most people who take that option, and again, if you're American, will probably refinance those loans in the first couple of years out of school, because the interest rates you can get from a number of technology-enabled lenders who really focus on MBA students and young professionals can be much more competitive than the government.
Sure, yeah. I mean, so I think I was someone who looked at a few industries over my 2 years. I was very interested in asset management in my first year of an internship with a mutual fund. And you sort of knew I wanted probably some type of investing role. I also, at moments, as many MBA students do, for the consulting angle there. And the only thing that sort of gave me some pause was the degree of travel that it entails, and the fact that you could be much more senior in your career and still be away from home essentially the same amount of time, which is generally so a lot of jobs, maybe the hours will get better as you get more senior because you'll have a team, or you have a bit more control over your own schedule. But at least the consulting options I looked at didn't quite seem to offer that, even if they might have paid me, they might have had the highest starting salaries out of the gate from business school. I think you realize going to school also that before school you could always just you try out some industry or some company and say, well, if I don't like it, I'll just go back and get an MBA. But now that's happening, so you really have to think a bit more about how can a particular job fit with what you're looking for professionally, where your location is important to you, and then just what trajectory you could potentially be on for your career. And there are valid arguments for probably taking almost any type of job, from one that is kind of the most standard MBA path to something that's very individualized. So I would definitely do an MBA, because I think, speaking again more about the US market, assuming you want to sort of stay in the US, while it is more expensive to do a 2-year MBA, the thing you have to realize is that people who are much more senior in their careers, that's sort of the path they've taken, and so like attracts like in a lot of ways. And just when you're in those interviews with people, you instantly have them able to understand what type of graduate school experience you've had, what type of coursework you may have done, and in an interview it's important to convey that in the first 10-30 seconds max, because it's just what people sort of expect to see. It's interesting. I think that could change in the future as tuition keeps getting higher and the opportunity cost keeps getting higher, so we may not see that forever. But at least in the moment in time that I found myself, I think it's still the best option. You also can think about programs that let you add an MBA in addition to the more specialized degree. So Kellogg, for example, I think has a sort of like a master's in product management and design and engineering, but then you can add the MBA in addition to that. So usually, if you want to go very narrowly in one place, you would benefit greatly from seeing if you could just add the MBA as well, or specialize in that field within the MBA. I mean,
Probably not. I mean, I would say I learned a few like specialized things I didn't know. Like, for example, like if I was going to go invest in real estate one day, I did learn specific things about like how to analyze that, where the legal questions I have to think about, and to the extent that I would be doing that in the future, I definitely learned something that I didn't know before. But I think the point of an MBA is much more about the range of companies and functions and problems you're exposed to, and how that sort of builds a bigger mosaic. If you want to think about knowledge, getting knowledge that you can use for the future. Sure. So again, obviously being American, my bias is towards schools that are in the U.S. I think that if you want to continue working in the U.S., while again INSEAD, LBS, plenty of schools in Asia will probably teach you great things, but again, there's just an additional amount you have to communicate to someone in an interview, or when you're trying to network with them, you get questions about why do you do it this way versus that way, and maybe you have a good explanation, but it's you don't want the interview to be focused on that. You want to be focused on your qualifications and why you're great for your job. I would say that in my anecdotal experience, I've certainly heard of all of these programs in the U.S., Europe, Asia, sending people to the really large employers, like the consultancies, the investment banks, etc. And so from that point of view, you could probably wind up in those types of jobs almost regardless of where you go. That probably won't be the factor. But if again you're looking for something much more specific, like working for a startup, or working in a field that is just a lot more localized, or a key feature that happens in like America or something like that, you really probably want to do yourself the most favors possible by doing a US MBA program. Sure. So I would say don't be yourself, be your best self. And that includes obviously your track record to date, but really I think it's a recognition that just a certain test score, a certain set of grades, or even just a brand name on your resume, by itself, those factors don't get you in. They really only get you a hard look, and then you have to communicate why you are special as a leader and as a colleague, and that you can know how to really bring teams together to accomplish difficult tasks, or tasks that might have seemed impossible. Those types of things, when you're at the point where there's two people, they have identical grades and test scores, then the question becomes all about what will this person bring to the community, and what will their peers learn from them. And that's where, if you clear all the initial sort of hurdles, that's how you really get in. So focus on those kinds of things in your essays and your letters of recommendation. If you have more questions, please create a profile on afriendabroad.com.